Hey everybody, Father Joshua here for Radio Free St. Rita. I was thinking this morning of my little church that I grew up in Granbury, Texas, a tiny little Episcopal church. We had a huge stained glass window right up by the altar that we knelt down to receive communion in that little church. And when you knelt down and you looked straight in front of you, there were two stained glass windows on either side, so you couldn't miss one or the other. On one side was a stained glass window of Adam and Eve eating the apple, the moment of the fall. And then on the other side was the moment of Judas kissing Jesus in the garden, right? My parish priest had that sort of humor and that sort of spirituality. He wanted us, when we knelt down to receive communion, this beautiful moment in Christian life, the moment of receiving Christ in the Eucharist. He wanted his flock in that moment to have at least one of those two images in their head, of the fall or the betrayal, right? There's something good, he thought, in not forgetting that although God brings us in and gives us this great gift of himself, in which we are made partakers in him, still it's good to remember our frailty and our weakness and our wickedness, right? I grew up in that church. I found faith in that church. And to this day, I don't forget those two stained glass windows that I used to see when I knelt for communion of the fall and the kiss of Judas. And I think about it at least once a year, especially Tuesday and Holy Week, when we are given this passage that the Church gives in the Mass today. These two scenes in John chapter 13 of Judas and Peter. The scene is the upper room just after the washing of the feet, right? And if you read it, beginning in chapter 13, verse 21, when Jesus had spoken thus, that is, when he had just washed his disciples' feet and explained it to them, it says he was troubled in spirit, right? So the scene today is of Jesus troubled in his very soul, and he says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me," right? He's troubled in soul because he knows that the people who are his friends, those who followed him and who profess to be followers of him, among that number, one of them will betray him. And again, what's even more troubling, following the story, is that the disciples wonder who this is, and Jesus says, "It's he to whom I shall give this morsel when I have dipped it," right? And so Jesus says, the person who's going to betray me is the one who I'm going to give this morsel of bread to, right? It's a very communion-like gesture, right? This is why the reader, the Christian, should get troubled a little bit, in the very ritual, in the very gesture, in the very act, which is very Eucharistic-like. The betrayer is revealed, right? Behind it, in a biblical way, is one can think of Numbers 21, where the Hebrews are murmuring in the desert, and God gives them the manna, which is a very tense story if you read it closely. There seems to be some sort of commentary here, and it may be what my parish priest was thinking when he put these two stained glass windows up, right? That is, although our moments of communion, those moments in which we are ritually, religiously closest to Him, if we have the heart of a betrayer, if our heart is not right, it doesn't matter. In fact, if we approach the Eucharist with the heart of betrayer, with the heart of Judas, well, then it just reveals us for our wickedness, right? What this story about Judas and the morsel of bread teaches us is we have to think about our spiritual motives. We must think about, our heart before we dare draw near to the Lord. And it's a haunting story. The other story which the church gives us is of Peter. We move on a few verses toward the end of chapter 13, and the next image is of Peter, who says, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus says, where I'm going, you cannot follow me now, but you shall follow afterwards. And Peter, in his bravado, he says, well, why can't I follow you now? I'll lay down my life for you. And then Jesus says, will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, before the cock crows, you'll have denied me 3 times. Right? So whereas Judas is the story of Judas is a story of hypocrisy and wickedness in the heart. John says it was night and Satan entered into him. That is an image of mortal sin almost. With Peter, it's not a story of betrayal, but a story of bravado. It's an image of venial sin almost, right? Peter thinks he is strong enough, right? Peter thinks he's in control, that he's powerful enough to follow Jesus to the end, and Jesus looks at him quite honestly and just says, no, you are weaker than you realize, Peter, right? And so that's the lesson for us, really. Drawing near to the Triduum, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, where we witness this story in a mystical way. We're warned by the church in this story to not be like Judas, right? Do not give a kiss to Jesus, as did Judas, to quote an Orthodox liturgy. But also to not be tempted to believe our own bravado, to be tempted to believe in our own sort of strength, because our strength will fail. We will fall, right? And that's because we need to be reminded that the only grace that matters for us is the grace which the risen Christ will give, right? We need to acknowledge our weakness. We need to acknowledge our foolishness, right? We can't be Christians by our own strength, but only by the strength of Jesus, right? Which brings us to the last image in this story from John 13. Read over it again, because it's not just the story of Judas and Peter. It's the story of the beloved disciple. In this passage at the end of John chapter 13, it's the first explicit reference to the beloved disciple, whom we assume to be John. Right? And what the beloved disciple is doing is that he's laying his head on Jesus' chest. At his side, it says in some translations. He is closest to the Lord, right? And everybody turns to him to ask him, And so how are we to be, right, if to resist the bravado of Peter, to resist the evil of Judas, where should we place ourselves, right? We should place ourselves like the beloved disciple, right here, near the Sacred Heart of Christ, right? And so that's a beautiful image for today, right? It's a beautiful image for every day. But when you pray, when you close your eyes and imagine, think of yourself like the beloved disciple, resting your head on the breast of Jesus, drawing near to him, being that close. Come unto me, all you who are labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's a beautiful spiritual place to be today and in these days. And it's exactly where we need to be before Holy Thursday and before Good Friday, to be near Christ in a very dark world. Have a blessed day.